Hi, I am Thomas, and welcome to my technical audio showreel. Let's look at the distance-based ambience system I implemented into the sample project Cropout. To begin, I created loops for each sounds I wanted to implement into the system. I used calmer ambience for when closer to the ground, and more distinct, heavy, low-frequency ambience further away. On top of this, every minute, Wise will deploy a boat horn sound to the environment depending on how far away you are. I use random 3D positioning automation to change this boat sound and where it sits in the stereo field. In the player blueprint, I found the zoom input action. I found the camera and spring arm's world location. I then subtracted them against each other and provided that vector length to the set RTPC value. In Wise, I created an RTPC called cam distance, and I set the minimum and max distance to the minimum and max of the scroll wheel in the game. Back in the blueprint, I attached this RTPC value, which then controlled the blend containers in Wise. So now when the zoom distance is set by the scroll wheel, the RTPC complies. Once I created an event with all the blend containers and then posted that event in the level blueprint, the ambience was now implemented. This is my stretch rumble system. When I move the controller sticks, the spheres pull away and the cable starts to stretch. Holding down the left or right bumper holds that sphere into place. As the spheres move to the edge of the screen, the rumble gets larger, and when they finally surpass that edge, they go right back to the middle. I began by finding a stretchy balloon sound in my sound library, popping it into Reaper and cutting it into itty bitty pieces. Then I put all of those bits into a blend container in Wise. Most of the blueprinting work is done in the first person character blueprint, which is the fixed perspective you can see. After making new input actions to control the spheres and lock the spheres, it was time to move on to the rumble and the stretch sound effects. First, I got the location of both spheres and used project world to screen to get 2D coordinates from that. Then, using get viewport size to get the X and Y of the viewport, I calculated the distance of the spheres from the top, left, right, and bottom edges of the screen. I did this by using subtract and max nodes. Putting those max nodes through to a min node calculates a float value of the nearest screen edge. I used event tick so this float value can be constantly updating. The min node values then branch out to two different locations. The first being some logic that clamps that float value between 0 and 1 so it can affect the intensity of the rumble. However, because we're moving out towards the screen and that's how we want the rumble to get larger, we want to invert that, so we use a subtract node. That minimum value from earlier is also sent to a set RTPC node that goes back to Wise. That set RTPC node is controlling stretch amount from earlier. The RTPC in Wise controls the blend container shown earlier, but it also controls a bunch of effects and parameters of the stretch sound, namely the pitch, volume, and the low pass filter. I doubled the balloon sound with the synthesizer, once adding both the synthesizer sound and the stretch sound to a blend container, and then controlling the pan on them by the RTPC mentioned earlier. I then created a stretch rubber left and a stretch rubber right event to be called in the event blueprint. Those Wise events are spawned at event begin play. The set RTPC value node and the rumble node were controlled by a custom event called trigger rumble. There are two identical blueprints, one for the left sphere and one for the right sphere. Those custom events are controlled by the event tick, so they are essentially an extension of the event tick.
Animalese